forget about Doug Ford kind of taking on the leadership role. We really don't have a government in place at the moment. And aren't we about to get hit with more increases on the carbon tax in like a few days? How are we going to deal with all this shit? Pardon my French.
It's rocky waters out there.
It is fucking pandemonium out there.
27% less sales in February.
Ugh.
In the GTA.
Less than last year.
Prices
what
are
about less
coming
than last month? How was it versus last month? Do we have that information?
Less. And people are
worse,
less, more listings, active listings.
Way more listings.
It's shooting up. It's shooting up. It's becoming a buyer's market in more than just the condo market in certain neighborhoods.
Yes, it is shooting up like a homeless man in British Columbia right now, TK.
Yes.
A lot.
Thank you for that visual.
Yeah, well,
but this is what it is.
Down the streets.
This is what it is. You got people who are very stressed right now. You're in this incredibly unpredictable political environment right now. The stock market's crashing.
Everything's fucked. But you know what's
the Bitcoin market seems to go up and then it goes down and then it goes up again. Yeah. Well, this is a reflection of what things are, what people think, right?
I guess so. I feel like
gold and silver prices skyrocketing.
Yeah, everything's kind of
coming. People are
confusing. Nobody knows what to do. Everybody's. Can you what industry is safe at the moment? Like, who's sitting at home going, I don't have to worry about this. My job is safe.
Repo guys.
Repo guys.
Repo guys are like,
hiring.
Yeah, this is great. Right? Yeah.
It's crazy. Like we had, do you remember I went to that big conference with all those big heavyweights in development and all the sales
the missing middle one or no?
No, it was.
No, I know. Okay, I know the one you're talking about. At the hotel, it wasn't more. It was less of a conference, more of like a mastermind.
It was a mastermind because the old school, I guess, way of doing sales in pre-construction. Those guys noted. I guess they saw the writing was on the wall, and they were trying to figure out how to keep the game alive. And the guy that held that thing, who's such a wonderful guy, and he really the best in class at what he does.
Yep.
He just put out a post on LinkedIn that he had to let a lot of his staff go. Okay, and so this guy does renderings, and he is literally the best in the world at doing renderings. He's also probably one of the most expensive, but it's because he's got local, like, serious talent, right? And there's nothing to do right now, or there's so little to do that you certainly don't need the staff that he was holding on to.
The budget for renderings has dropped significantly. So whatever projects are going forward, they're just like, listen, man, we don't even know if this thing's gonna fly. Let's just, instead of doing all those renderings that we did for the last projects, let's just do the ones that we think are going to be necessary.
Well, I'm talking to most of the people that are able to launch in this environment. Although this environment changed in the last couple of days. Before the tariffs, all the people that had the product, like I have, the boutique-y, end user, high end kind of luxury stuff, all of those guys, they're singing a different tune now, as well as everybody else, because this just threw such a big wrench all of a sudden into everybody's thinking. It's like everybody's running for the hills. And so I was saying, like, who's safe right now? If you're in the auto sector, you're not like wanting to renew your mortgage right now or buy something new, right? If you're in the oil sector, or if you're in potash, or if you're in base, like, what is safe other than the repo guys, TK?
Yeah.
We thought that this high-end market was safe. And I don't know that it's not. But like it's crazy how little work there must be for all of these kind of consultants that used to be necessary. Now, take for example, though, this guy's business, which was a wonderful business up until now and might still end up being a wonderful business, but there's competition out there for a fraction of the price that does it almost as good enough. And actually, what I see out there with these guys that are thinking about launching is there's a balance going on of, do we need a full sales center now? Do we need to spend all this money on marketing right now?
100%.
Should we
They're not going forward risking the same amount of money on the launches like they used to.
No, it's like a little
Like
feeler,
a
little
movie
pre-launch.
theater, and they're gonna launch, and they're gonna have a barbecue, and they're gonna invite all these celebrities, and Snoop Dogg's gonna be there. Like that stuff is not happening anymore.
Are you looking for the best merch store on the planet? Well, we got the shit for you. Coming in at low prices where we barely make any money off of whatsoever, you can get the greatest real estate merchandise on this platform. Just look at this very flamboyant man putting on this great stuff. He looks great, he's dancing great, and boy does he look sexy in that merchandise. I tell you, buy this for anybody, you buy this for yourself. You will be not only repping the greatest Canadian real estate podcast in this world, but you will also be looking hella good doing it.
No, because
when you're a developer and you're thinking about launching, you're just trying to, figure out, are you even going to be able to sell or not? Like, does it make sense to launch, or does it make sense to hang up your hat, or does it make sense to refinance? Does it make sense to raise more money? Like, all those decisions are right now, convert to purpose-built rental. Those are all the decisions you're making right now. Before, it was just like, we got zoned. Let's launch pre-sales. We know we're going to get it done. Invest the money into the sales centers and all the things, because that's all going to just be a line item by the time we're all said and done.
Yeah, and that's
not
just how it
anymore.
works. No,
Nobody knows for sure what project's going to fly and which one's not. And most likely not.
Well, most likely they just won't get launched, right? I mean, there's not too many that are launching that aren't of this either just like houses, regular single family houses,
low rise, yeah,
townhouses, or these like really expensive end user products, and now some purpose built rentals, right? But most people are having a hard time figuring out how to get their projects that were supposed to be for investors to be for end users, because it's still, you can't double the space and not double the price, right? For the performa to work, right? Even if you're removing a let's say one bathroom and a kitchen, right? Maybe a couple of walls, but it's not enough to make the difference of where the price has to be in order for people to be able to buy it. So it's still, it's a big fuck up. It's getting bigger.
Where you going? What should the people do?
What?
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe. I'm double subscribed. Do it yourself. Didn't get to fix the show, though. Didn't get to fix the show.
And maybe now is a good time to cut over to our friend Mark Morris, who has a rant about this, and it's fucking scary.
Legal expert Mark Morris. Mark, what do you have to tell us today?
Guys, I'm a bit casual today, you'll forgive me, but I have a rant that I really want to get out because we're seeing things in our office now that we had known were coming for a long time, but now really are here. And that is happening in the builder failure rates of people who are now coming to market. That is to say, when a building finishes its construction cycle, it's usually a 5-year cycle. We were at the height of market in 2021, 2022, and so what we're seeing now in the builders that are actually closing are those builders that really priced at the height of market. Now, particularly with those people who are not large, this is a huge problem. And I'll explain the difference between large and small. Large players, like Tridel, the Mintos, the Manamis, whatever it is, land bank for many, many years before they bring a project to market, and they can afford to do that. And by land banking for many years, what that means is that the cost of their acquisition of land was significantly below what the cost of acquisition of land is for these smaller players who may have acquired the property about 1 or 2 years ago in the height of market themselves and were forced to price at much higher rates than the Manamis, than the Mintos, than the Menkes, and everything else. And so we're seeing higher failure rates at the smaller builder level. But amongst the mid-size builders and amongst even the large, what we're seeing are failure rates approaching 25% presently. This is a problem for the individual, but frankly, we're approaching failure rates that are becoming problematic for the actual builders. And unlike in the mortgage world, where CMHC and Sagan and everyone else are backstopping mortgages, and so they're largely safe for banks, remember, the people who are defaulting don't have mortgages at the present time. And as a result, what we are talking about is we're talking about the potential failure of construction loans that aren't CMHC insured. And so what we're talking about finally is the acute failure of the market starting to affect the builders and perhaps even the banks. Now, that hasn't happened yet, but this industry is now replete with the echoes of those thunderous drums that you used to hear in Lord of the Rings to intone like the orcs were coming. That's kind of the way I feel right now about the market. And that's showing itself in a whole bunch of ways. I know that there's a lot of realtors that actually watch this station. I would tell you that separate and apart from all of the consumer pain, I've had a whole lot, and I'm talking a whole lot, of agents who have now been approached by the builders who are now seeking clawbacks of the commissions that were paid. Because for those of you who are unfamiliar, commissions in the new build space are paid in tranches, and generally a portion of the commissions are paid at the outset after a certain amount of deposits are paid, and the balance is paid on final closing. Well, if it doesn't close, a lot of builders have contracts that allow them to claw back those commissions, meaning that agents who have already spent these monies are now in hock to the builder for these funds. In addition, we have banks that are looking at builders' balance sheets and saying, we have a problem here. 25% failure rates may mean that we don't get paid back. And of course, there's all the comical ways that this is actually presenting itself in our industry. Someone from my office, an associate, was just invited to a major builder who's having a last launch of their prestige projects and products in this very, very well-known development. And we were able to identify 2 of the products in that development as being failed deals with our office. And what it was not that they were withholding these units. It's that they're trying to mitigate their loss because they're experiencing the 25% failure rate, and they're now going ahead and they're relaunching the prestige product that they were ultimately holding to the market and trying to mitigate in that regard. So we are experiencing now really what is, I think, we're almost at the event horizon. You know, that place in space where if you go a little bit further, you kind of start sinking and everyone kind of recognizes there's no way out. We're approaching that area. We long since lost the assignment market, that is to say the liquidity of the assignment market. We are now at a point where it's almost okay to walk away. So many people are doing it that the stories on Reddit and the stories amongst one another, in the same way that there were stories in COVID about the fact that tenants were able to take advantage of landlords, and suddenly that became the thing to do and everyone understood how much you were able to extort for cash for keys. Now there is this body of talk that is surrounding itself in our markets, which are basically saying, hey, it's okay to walk away from deals. And that's becoming something which will further exacerbate the problem if I am right, because there's no official stats on this. If I am right, and if we are at 25% failure rates, moving up to 35% failure rates, 40% failure rates may actually happen quicker than we think. And whilst you only need 50% of unit holders to ultimately constitute a condo, the fact that people aren't getting their profit margins but also don't have enough money to pay back the banks is going to be, I think, the story of 2025. This is only going to get worse. And so, again, it's only in the new build space. Remember, resale market's still functioning well, but the new build space, my God, it is, for those in the know, it is getting very scary indeed. And so that's my rant. That's what I wanted to mention for this week. And yeah, I'd be very interested to read the comments from this rant and hear what you guys think, particularly if you're a professional in the area. I'd really love that feedback. So thank you guys as always, and I'm going to wish you a wonderful weekend.
Wow. So that's going on right now underneath the surface. These are the things that you don't read about in the interweb, TK.
No, it's not the mainstream media, because obviously when people go through these type of situations, they're kind of embarrassed, There's like, I'm defaulting. I can't afford it. I don't qualify. They're not running around telling everybody unless it's a total catastrophe and they're losing everything.
Mhm.
So there's just so many of these defaults going on, and Mark would know better than anybody else. I mean, I only come across the handful of our own clients, but I mean, geez, Mark, he's well known and he's a great lawyer and he's got lots of the clients and referrals from agents, and so people are really sending him the the worst of the worst to say, Mark, help solve these problems, and you can't, you know.
Well, the scariest part of the rant was the part about all the pre-construction and the 25% default rate on the new stuff that's happening right now.
Yeah.
And how the hell is that? See,
Well, we've been talking about it for a little while.
we've
Like
been talking about
the
it for a
blanket
while.
mortgages are obviously the first step that the bank offers, which is a
How
risk to
long?
them, but
How
they're
long?
passing that risk onto the buyer, onto the person who's going to move in, because they're going, the investor, the person who they feel is going to be personally able to pay that monthly payment until hopefully the market recovers. But now they're saying, well, if the builder doesn't have enough money to be able to service the debt on that construction loan, and they got 25% of their units that are just sitting there, what are they going to do? Flood them on the market, rent them out? Like, there's a lot
Yeah.
of issues that comes with a builder starting to rent out his unit. It's no longer a new product.
Well, and
And so,
he said though that, it's becoming almost in fashion to just walk away from the contract because so many people are doing it.
mhm,
It's like, are you really going to just sue all of us, or are you going to deal with the problem you have?
yeah,
Right. And he says, like with the landlord tenant board during COVID, when people, learned, some of the ways to wiggle around the system, they abused it. It spread on social media. They
yeah.
abused the shit out of it. And he says that is what he sees happening now.
It's a little bit different though, because people's deposits that they've put up, some of them, it's their life savings. So it's a
Mhm.
little bit different. I deal with a lot of people in these types of situations, and people are very resilient. They will do whatever it takes in order to be able to not lose a buck. And so there's going to be situations where people are really of two minds, where it's like, oh my God, I have to give up this huge amount of money at the risk of losing more and carrying all this stress and having all this other stuff, right? Um, or it's like, do I really just think that, I could default and let the builders sue me again, with the unknown of how much money I'm going to actually owe them in the end. It's not an easy decision, and I don't think it's like the landlord tenant board where people just stop paying rent and they don't go in. But I understand the reference there. It's similar as in the sense of, as more people, and it's more commonly used, that people who are capable and are willing to do it are more likely to know about it, and so it's going to happen more often.
It's going to happen more and more often as these tariffs weigh down the economy. It's pretty crazy though that we're standing our ground and maybe we're making
We'll
some
wait for our
headway.
guest to get into the tariff stuff, but
Yeah, let's wait. He's
yeah,
here. We should get him in. I mean, this
yeah,
is
okay.
the biggest guest that we may ever have on the show,
No, we got
TK.
a bigger guest coming.
Next week? Next week is a big
Our
guest too.
well, we're talking about our friend Doug. Doug is a friend of the show. Okay,
Dougie
he's a friend of.
Ford.
He may have never seen the show yet, but he's a friend of the show, and I believe
Yeah,
when I put it out there, into the world, things happen. So yeah,
I
Doug
think
Ford
he
will be
would
on the
come
show,
on.
guys.
Yeah,
We just
I
haven't
think
booked him yet.
I think we should work on that,
Yeah,
TK. I
good.
wonder who can get that done. Listen, you got today's guest. I'm pretty sure, you met him in a professional setting, right, TK? So you probably
Yeah.
impressed the shit out of him. He saw you win 18 trophies that night,
Yep,
that day.
best, most handsome,
Most handsome, best black eye.
best efforts.
Yeah,
Years in real estate with little to no success, but still, kept on
right.
coming around with
Most
tenacity.
most consistent haircut,
Yeah, most
right?
frequented to the barbershop.
Most frequented to the barbershop. Award
Yep,
goes to
yep. I
TK
clean up.
Butler.
I
Oh,
clean up.
did we lose him? He
I clean up.
gone. Oh no, he's gone. We
He'll
missed
be
him,
back.
TK.
He'll be
It's
back.
over. We missed him.
So I got
That's too
I
bad.
got two offers on one place. I got an over asking offer.
Oh, he's back. You got an
Over
over
2 million
offer?
in the city. Yeah.
Over
So
2 million
I'm pretty
over
sure we're going to
asking.
accept it, but the problem is
Oh, there's a problem with
There's a
that?
lot of debt on the property, and so
Like,
we are negotiating with the lenders to see if this deal can even,
more
so even though
debt
it's
than
over
the sale
asking, even though it's
price?
a great price, even though
More,
everything's
is there,
fantastic,
yeah,
there's
is there more
still
debt than the asking price?
um it's close because
Oh,
we're getting discharge statements from the lenders, and
yeah,
so when you start getting these last minute discharge statements in this type of situation, they just start adding on every bloody expense they possibly can. And
sure.
so all of
This
a sudden it's
fee,
200
that
grand more than you
fee.
thought. And you're just like, hang on a second here. We're not gonna be able to do this deal if you want every penny. So anyways, we're
If you
working on
want
that
every
stuff. So
penny. Well, everybody wants every penny. That's for damn
everybody
sure.
does.
Welcome to the show, our biggest guest of all time, Mr. Tim
There you
Hudak.
go.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Don't hype them up too
Biggest
much here,
guest of all
okay? I
time. Is that
know.
a shot of my weight gain?
No. Daryl's, we're happy to have you,
Subtle,
Tim. That's all
subtle.
it is. And the timing of you coming on the show today couldn't be better.
Couldn't be
You
better
know,
for us. Yeah.
But you
uh,
are acknowledging the weight gain. Now I'm feeling bad.
no,
That's
not
right.
even
That's right.
close. Not
We
even
will make
close.
sure that we point it out extra through editing. We'll get an old picture of you up in your thinner days.
So Tim, we're
Okay.
happy to have you on. We obviously got a political climate. You being a seasoned MPP, eventually leader of the opposition in Ontario for the Conservative Party, eventually becoming the CEO of Aurea, and now in the private world. I think you know a few things about real estate and politics. I mean, definitely compared to Darryl and I on the political side of things, you're an expert and we're the amateurs. So we're happy to have you on today, and thanks for joining us and being willing to come on the
Yeah.
show.
For sure. I gotta say, I like the fashion here, gentlemen. Make Canada great again. And TK, what's your shirt saying there?
This
You're
is our
rocking this
merch.
shirt.
Yep, which the link is below for anyone
There
who's
you
looking to
go.
buy our shirts. We've got our merch to Canadian Real Estate Show. We got hats, we got
That's right.
sweaters, we got mugs, you name it.
And people
Looking
actually
good.
buy them, which is the craziest part of the whole thing. We got another order yesterday, TK. This thing is on fire.
There you go. I've got my Protect Ontario ball cap. I can go grab that if you want
That's a good one.
during
That's
the
a good
broadcast.
one. Yeah. Protect Ontario. Well, what a great segue into what's on like everybody's mind all of the time right now. What's happening in your world with these tariffs?
Depends when this is broadcast, right? Like every day,
Yeah.
there's one thing, and then it changes during the day, and then you go to bed at night, you don't know what's going to happen. But look, let me answer it this way, and I'm happy again, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on the show, and TK, great to see you again. It was awesome to be there at Frank Leo Appreciation Dinner Awards, and fantastic to see the way your outstanding expertise and service to clients is recognized year again. I think you walked away with more medals than an Olympian. So I hope 25
right.
is a good year for you again, despite the challenges.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. We were talking about what those trophies were for, and it was just basically best looking, most frequented to the barber shop, longest streak of no sales. But I know, I get it. Trophy's a trophy, so I appreciate it.
No, and I appreciate you guys having me on. And look, it is the most bizarre but high stakes beginning to a year that I can remember in my time following politics, and that's been a few years. It is a roller coaster we're on. It's a lot of twists and a lot of turns, a lot of ups and downs. We don't know when we're going to hit flat track. I'll get to know them, and I think we will. But that's why what you do, TK, and Darryl too, through the broadcast and your work. Holding buyers and sellers calm, thoughtful in the pocket is so easy to get caught up in the emotion of the day to make a bad decision on the biggest investment of your life. And that's why professionals like yourself play such a critical role right now in getting the facts, giving smart advice, looking out for somebody's long-term interest and that of their family. So hats off to you. Big picture wise, I think it's going to be turbulent for a while. I think we're going to have, like I said, it's like a roller coaster, but we will hit flat track. My gut tells me that's probably about 8 months down the road. I do believe we will reach an agreement with the Americans that will do positive things that will help lower costs on both sides of the border, will create more jobs and more investment in Canada, as well as the States, do more for our military. And I think with pent-up demand and lower interest rates, that means good things for housing and a healthier market. But it's going to be rough for a while.
Rough for
Yeah,
a
as of
while.
today. So
Yeah.
we're recording this on Thursday, March 6th. I guess that's how we have to
That's
talk
a
today.
lot of time till Sunday
Okay.
morning, right? When it
So
airs.
as of right now,
War could be
okay,
over.
yesterday was a conversation on the phone between Trudeau and Trump, and it may have gone well, it may have not gone well, depending on, who's
Your
reading
perspective.
the transcript of it.
Yeah.
And we've been getting a lot of feedback about, whether or not we're doing enough, or whether or not, Trump is expecting us to remove all of our restrictions, and perhaps he would come down a little bit. So it seems like a little bit of a negotiation going on, right? But you're hearing things from different people, and then I mean, unless you hear Trump or see Trump tweet about it, you're not hearing it from the horse's mouth. So we're getting it from all these other sides of their government sometimes, and you're kind of just like, okay, what does that even mean? I want to know what Trump has to say because he's the guy calling the shots. So
Yeah, I mean that comes from professional negotiator yourself, TK. Trump, at the end of the day, is a businessman. He is going to make a deal that he'll want to declare a winner. He does have a bit of a mean spirit. He'll probably want to declare a loser at the same time, and that's not the way you operate, but that's more in his view. But I think at the end of the day, he's going to look for a deal. Here's why I'm feeling a bit more optimistic on Thursday, March 6th.
yeah,
Who knows how this turns out for Sunday? But when Trump came into office, it was a very different president than Trump round one. He was more organized. He did 100 plus different executive orders on things he promised to do in the campaign. It looked like he had his shit together, and he got through his appointments this time when it was a circus last time around. And there's no Russia conspiracy out there about the election being bought. When it came to tariffs, that made me nervous because there are people around Trump who have a belief in tariffs, that the Americans should raise tariffs. They do so because they should exact a price for using their military to be the police of the world, and also because their currency, their banking system, is sort of a bedrock of international commerce. So they figure they should get paid for that. They also have a view that if tariffs go on a country, Canada, China, what have you, that country's currency goes down. We've seen that with our dollar. And as a result, the prices in the US market won't change, so they don't feel the tariffs. That's their economic theory. And I was worried about that. I don't agree with it. My background's actually economics. I don't agree with it, but I was worried that's what their plan was, and that higher tariffs would be inevitable and damaging to us. But now that we're getting through this a little bit, it looks more like it's transactional. Yeah, at the end of the day, that old maxim I always use about Trump, you can't take him literally, but you do need to take him seriously. There's a deal on the table. Just going to take us some time to figure out exactly what that's going to be.
What is the deal? So that's kind of what a lot of people. Does anybody really know what is the goal here? What is he? I mean, if you look at it as a long-term play from somebody that only has 4 years to do something, it's kind of a strange approach, because the way that his plan works is not overnight, right? It's not in 3 months all of a sudden our manufacturing base will be on the other side of the border, right? It's not like all of a sudden they're going to have all these forests cut down and lumber that they can use for construction right away, right? It's not like they can replace all this, everything that they rely on us for right away, but it feels like they're willing to feel the pain for a little bit until they figure it out, which is kind of scary. And then what's even scarier is it feels like Canada is digging their heels in and saying, like, I don't think so, guys. We don't like this, and we're gonna fight. We're gonna fight for what's right here, which is scary because we're David and they're Goliath. Isn't that the case?
Although David won that one.
David won
that one.
Yeah.
So Darryl, you put some really good points on the table, and I think your thinking is very clear on this. There's a lot I can say, so let me try to make three main points, and then I can come back later to how I think Canada should play this. Number one, Trump wants to bring manufacturing jobs back to the states, the heartland, and these are states like Michigan, and Pennsylvania that he swung back to the Republican fold. So he wants to deliver on that. At the same time, he also keeps his two measures of success. Like, TK is going to look at transactions, going to look at leads, right? His two measures really have been in the campaign, what's happening in the Dow Jones stock market, and number two, where's inflation? And the problem is, if you put tariffs on Canada, it's going to cause, because we're so closely integrated with the Americans, disruption that will drive up prices. And you've already seen that the stock market got pretty rattled. So 2 of his numbers on his scoreboard went down. I bet you that's part of his early reversals. He was permanent when it comes to tariffs on auto parts. Number 3, the real target here for Trump is China, right? China that's not playing fair. They've undermined Canada as well as the States. He'd like to see more jobs in the States coming from manufacturing where the Chinese have benefited. So I was actually down in Washington, D.C. when Premier Ford was down there. We met with Americans, and I heard 2 things. Number one, the Americans that we talked to, the Republicans, don't understand why Canada's in the targets. They say we should join together and set our trade targets on China. They're the ones that are breaking the rules and stealing the jobs. Number 2, this is the tougher part, Darryl. They said, we agree that you're not the right target, but we're afraid to speak out right now. They didn't exactly say they're afraid, but they didn't want to jump on President Trump when he's on a roll and very popular among Republicans. The term they use is they don't want to get primaried, right? Replaced by another Trump loyalist. I think that will break. I feel optimistic, and I'm happy to talk more about what I think Canada should do in the meantime.
And so what do you feel Canada's position is? Do you think that right now this is something that is worth fighting for, or do you think we should be more amenable to whatever negotiations they're offering?
Yeah, I see a 3-step plan here. Number one, often people will say that when there's a bully in the playground, you stand up to the bully. There's an alternative. You join with the bully and pick on somebody smaller. And that's why, TK, I think we should send our Navy to Greenland and Panama and take them.
Panama's now controlled by BlackRock, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Greenland's right next to us. I mean, come on. Yeah. And if Santa's not in Canada, he's in Greenland. Anyway, thanks for laughing. I don't know if we can still make jokes in a serious situation, but I like that one. So you got to stand up to the bully, right? I think that if we immediately caved into Trump, he's just going to raise the stakes and demand more. So you got to actually push back. And as part of that pushback, step 2 is you need to be smart and set your targets so the American political decision makers and allies of Trump feel it back in their home districts. So that means we do increase tariffs. We do look at other impacts on Americans and target them to some of the key decision makers in Congress. That's why bourbon is always banned, not just because, it's liquor and we don't really need it, although sometimes I feel I do. I do like my bourbons. I mean, that was Senator Mitch McConnell, Kentucky. So that was a key player in the Senate. So you need to actually give some impetus to the American decision makers to say, hey, I'm losing jobs. Prices are going up in my home district. I'm getting beaten up when I'm back home from Washington, D.C. And then they have more of an incentive to raise their voice and say, let's call this off with Canada and, go after the real bad guys. Mm-hmm. And number 3, you need to figure out what that deal is going to be because you got to give Trump a win. That's his character, right? So what can you give it's a win to him is very visible for the Americans, but still will benefit us here in Canada. So this is where I'm guessing things are going to go. We're going to actually start tearing down more barriers, and we really should. We have artificial barriers in Canada that drive up the cost of agricultural goods, basic foods. And, if we allow more competition, more choice, it's pretty hard to afford groceries these days. I think it's actually good for Canadians at the end of the day. We should have more competition. I'd love it if there's more American Airlines or British Airlines or what have you. It gave me some choice.
Phone companies.
Yeah, we need more American banks.
Phone companies, another one, banks. So, allowing more choice. Trump gets a win because Americans have more business opportunities. Canadians get a win because we get more choice and lower cost at the end of the day. I think it's smart for us to toughen the border. We let too many characters into North America who actually want to commit crimes or destroy the country. Immigration's always been an important source, for us for jobs and investment. But surely to goodness, we can do a better job at stopping people in who want to attack the Americans or Canadians alike. So stronger, more coordinated immigration policy, and then do more in defense, right? I mean, Canada punched above its weight during World War I, World War II in Korea. We had that reputation, but we've really let our military spending slide, slacking off and letting the Americans cover for us. We're down at the bottom of the pack in with Slovenia in NATO, for goodness sakes. That's not something to be proud of. Bit of a long answer there, but I see a package like that, gentlemen, that we can put on the table that's actually good for Canadians, safer border, doing more for defense, lowering costs, creating jobs in Canada. And it's also something Trump can call for a win. That's where I'm hoping it ends up at the end of the day.
So a lot of that is dependent on Trump being a reasonable person and a negotiator. And so I agree that everything you said would be the most ideal scenario is to come out. I think based on I was listening on the radio where they were talking back when Sir John A. Macdonald was prime minister, and how those tariffs, which there was always tariffs, but they increased tariffs up to 50+%, and they were fighting back, and they started doing more business with Britain. All of a sudden, there was 4 or 5 times more ships going to Britain instead of down to the States, and eventually the tariffs were reduced back to where they were. So instead of us trying to fight fire with fire, we found solutions, and it actually benefited us because it opened up pathways. And I know we're talking about the common enemy in China, but like we're already starting to increase our exports to China on the energy side. We're already looking at options as far as Europe and other countries in order to be able to expand interprovincial type of trade and stuff like that, which is really good. So what solutions do you think? Let's assume Trump is not reasonable, not willing to provide us any real deal that makes sense for Canada to take. What can Canada do as a country on its own without assuming those tariffs stay, in order to be able to better improve our situation?
Yeah, I hear you, right? There are many times it's come full circle in Canadian history, but here's what's different. Back in the 1890s, where we increased trade with Britain, 2 things. We weren't as closely integrated with the Americans at the time. To an extent we were, but nowhere near this level. And there's only a small number of countries that mattered at that point in time. We don't have any rail links that go into Europe. We don't have any roads that drive into Europe. We're not going to build a bridge that long. So yeah, it's good to diversify, but I don't think you put all of your eggs in that basket. Here's 2 reasons why I do feel optimistic about this settling. Number one, the degree of integration culturally and economically of the Americans is strong. So yeah, we got a lot of noise right now. But as you've probably talked about, TK, in the show, auto parts go across the border 6, 7, 8 times before they finish off in a vehicle. Agricultural products like beef are very much like that as well. So I do believe there's going to be a commonality when it comes to economic interests among people working in those places, among senators and congressmen who represent those areas, to get rational heads. Here's number 2. I hear what you say, that Trump's not always rational. It's got a lot on his plate. And despite the fact that we're wall-to-wall Trump coverage in Canada, go across the border, it ain't the same. Trying to get peace in Ukraine, trying to get hostages freed from Hamas, wants to turn Gaza into, a park, going after China, going after Europe to do more on their defense. Like, the guy's got a pretty active set of products ahead of him, let alone American domestic products. I don't think Canada is anywhere near the top of his radar screen as we think it is. That's why I think it's easier for him to settle on that, get the win, but focus on, quite frankly, bigger international fish.
Does anybody think that Doug Ford will actually turn the power off? Is that something that
first of all, Doug's a friend of the show. Okay, so we're big on Dougie over here.
He will be on the show at some point.
He's going to be on the show. He doesn't know about the show or has been invited on the show yet, but he's going to be on the show, and we think he's doing a great job. But what do you think he's really going to do, Tim? What do you think Doug's capabilities are? And we won't tell anybody that you tell us.
Is there a switch?
Oh yeah, there is a switch. Sadly, we saw that switch triggered back in the big blackout. What was that, 2002, right? Certainly, the switch went down and we're all sitting in the dark. So you should invite him on the show. Like, he loves talking to people. He'd enjoy your show. And Doug Ford is a huge champion of home ownership, and he appreciate what you guys do to promote that. So ask, and if I can help, I'd be glad to second that motion.
You just did by that clip.
We're going to send that to his office every day.
So I think he has done a tremendous, historic job on this file, with an absence really of any leadership at the federal level, the confusion there in the Liberal Party, Trudeau stepping down. He has been Captain Canada. I think his tone has been spot on. He evokes the sadness and some anger of Canadians, but when he communicates with Americans, he brings us together. I mentioned a few minutes ago, I was there in Washington, D.C. I saw Doug Ford in action when he was appealing to American leaders. And it was a message that said, a genuine affection for Americans, like he loves Canadians, a way we can actually work together, sadness where we're going, but not blow up all the bridges. And he had a plan that he called Fortress Can-Am that talked about how we can grow together, lower costs, create more jobs, and have stronger defense and security. It was a beautiful message. I'm confident it's going to win out at the end of the day. But as I said earlier, my 3-stage plan, right? You can't back down to the bully. You've got to push back so there's pain shared on both sides of the border. Then you reach a deal. We're in phase 2 right now. So Premier Ford needs to credibly have every option still on the table. Hopefully you don't have to use it, right? But in any negotiation, you've got to be prepared to go the extra mile.
And sometimes in the schoolyard, okay, I got two boys, right? Older brother, younger brother. When the little brother, he's getting bullied, sometimes he's got to call his big brother to come in and save him. And Doug is the big brother, right? Because obviously right now we lack leadership. We don't have somebody fighting for us. We need the big, tough older brother to come in and make sure that everyone knows not to mess with us. So I think he's doing a great job on that.
And he actually is the big brother too, right? To former Mayor Rob Ford. Um, the thing I'll add to that too is one thing that didn't get covered in the election campaign very much is he actually had a plan in his platform to help us while this roller coaster is going through its twists and turns. So support for businesses, a tax waiver on payroll for I think it was 6 months, support to the hospitality sector, additional funding for critical minerals for the auto side. I'd love to add to that real estate, by the way. I mean, as you gentlemen well know, it was real estate that kept Ontario's head above water during downturns in the past. The financial crisis in 08, 09, which wasn't great for real estate, but at least something was happening when everything else went quiet.
Are you a real estate agent and you're looking to make a change anywhere in Ontario? Guess what? We're hiring. Franklin Associates, #1 team in the GTA for all REMAX teams, #1 team for all teams from all companies for number of units sold throughout Toronto. So if you're looking to make a change, best decision I ever made was to join Franklin Associates. Go to jointeamleo.com and we can set up a call.
I do think the time is now for the government of Ontario and Canada to really start pushing housing and affordability, clear up this approval process. It takes you forever to get to a maybe, get development charges down so there's not 200K on a house before the first soil is lifted by that very first shovel. Maybe find some programs to help first-time buyers that come from more modest means get in the market. If we're going to go through a rough time, housing can be something because it's not an export product that holds the ship steadier until we get to flat land.
How do we get it to be affordable though? Like as a developer, it doesn't work right now. It just really doesn't work. Even with the incentives on the table, some things are able to work, but it's not there yet. And then on top of that, the demand just really isn't there, especially for the product that does work, which nobody wants. And now on top of it, we add this new layer that really, up until really recently, was not part of anybody's thesis moving forward, right? So we were talking just before you joined us about, all these different sectors. Who is comfortable enough to renew a mortgage right now, and who's comfortable enough to feel secure that their job will be there next week? TK mentioned debt collectors, which was a brilliant
litigation lawyers too. Litigation lawyers.
The repo man is going to do okay, eh?
The repo man. Yeah. But I mean, I just don't know how this. I don't see us having the position we need to hold on for 8 months. Like 8 months sounds like it'll be a real big mess to have to figure out, especially when we don't forget about Doug Ford kind of taking on the leadership role. We really don't have a government in place at the moment. And aren't we about to get hit with more increases on the carbon tax in like a few days? How are we going to deal with all this shit? Pardon my French.
Yeah. And so my answer on that one, Darryl, is you got to do something. And sometimes in this kind of world, some is better than all. So, for example, development charges are a real block to affordability and getting more homes built.
Oh, yeah.
So what if you waive development charges? What if you compensated municipalities in other ways to invest in their arenas, the roads, the bridges, use the Ontario government as we do during times of crisis to help fund infrastructure, people working, and then clear the way for more homes being built. Similarly, reward municipalities that speed up the approval process, which costs, raises the price of a home, thousands of dollars each day in inflation when things are delayed. You could have a program that helps with loans or steadying developers, or on the buyer side. Interest rates will come down. That's I guess, a positive outcome of all this. So yeah, I agree. You're not going to solve all of the problems around uncertainty. Maybe not need half the problems, but I think it'd do something. And I think it put more people into homes. and keep the construction sector active while we go through this challenge in our export industries.
Before we go more into some of the federal stuff that's going on, just because you've been in politics for so long and you've seen budgets and you've heard the other side. Because as somebody who's never been in politics, we're looking at it going, okay, so you're going to turn this parking lot where right now you're collecting $25,000 a year in property taxes. We're going to put 400 units on top, and that afterwards you're going to be collecting $1.2 million a year in property taxes, right? But you still
Sure.
want to have $100,000, $50 to $100,000 a unit in development charges in order to be able to pay for these additional services. Where's that $1.2 million of annual property taxes going forward? Like, what's the holdup on these development charges? Like, obviously, if it could be done, it would be done. I'm not saying like this is like a conspiracy, and the municipalities are all just like they literally can't. Their budgets don't allow for it because they're expecting this to come. But those development charges will never come if the property's never built. Like it's never gonna. There won't be a building. There'll just be a parking lot. It's actually they're gonna miss out on income by not waiving development charges and allowing the construction of that property to be built. What's going on, Tim?
TK, that's just too much common sense. That's why you'll have no future in politics. Stick to real estate.
Okay,
Too much
That's-
common
Well,
sense.
that won't be an issue.
It's a great common sense point. I worry that the development charges and the double land transfer tax in Toronto are like the heroin of taxes. They're just addicted to it. They get a high. It can go into a bit of a slush fund. It doesn't necessarily go where you want it. Municipalities are sitting literally on, that's what I looked, about $7 billion in development charges, just sort of sitting there in the bank. What do you do about it? Two things. I think that you need to have people like the Ontario Real Estate Association, where I was, TREB, the home builders, just continue to pile on and point out, and TK, employ you to do this too. The logic you laid out that they're going to get more money in the long run by a steady stream of property tax from homeowners than they would in a one-time fee for development charges. So keep beating that drum until you win. There are signs of progress, right? We did see Vaughan, for example, dramatically reduce, I think eliminate their development charges. Mississauga now is following suit. Governments can reward them. So if you do this as a municipality, you move to the top of the list for that, that hospital, that arena, whatever the big project is, you reward that behavior. There is an exciting model moving forward as well that, we championed when I was at Aurea, which would turn water and sewer more into a utility. So you don't have to pay the upfront development charges at once, which can be 60 to 70 grand on the price of a home. But just like we would build new hydro lines, you pay over use over time, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, right? Like paying down a mortgage, that lowers the upfront costs, and future users help pay that down. So I can tell you the province of Ontario is looking at putting that model. It exists elsewhere, including some municipalities in Ontario, and that will take a significant chunk off the price of a new home.
Yeah, the water and sewer, I understand when you're building in Vaughan or some rural area and stuff like that. But the infrastructure in the core is pretty much already at the rate, the flow rates and all that are already at the level that will support that building. It's strictly now just like well, this is what the development charges are. And so, yeah, it's really hard math. It's very, 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 very difficult math when you start looking at exactly how much money could be obtained from 5 years of property taxes compared to those development charges. And then more importantly, which is what we're dealing with right now and what Darryl was kind of alluding to when he was saying, well, it just doesn't make sense and things aren't going to get done, is ultimately it's pricing. Like there's buyers for every product. If you can take 100 grand off the cost of an $800,000 house, condo, townhouse, wherever it is, you'll have buyers. Trust me. There'll be people just right now at 800 for that product. There's no buyers. So it's like take away the development charges, Darryl, for you. Obviously, the developer couldn't take away any of their costs; they're already razor thin margins. But take away that entire amount that the was being passed on to the buyer, and credit to them that 100,000 roughly, give or take, and all of a sudden you're going to start seeing people go, well, maybe I should move to Orangeville or wherever it is that they're moving to, right?
Yeah, that's good economics, right? Whenever you move the price, supply and demand curves go into action, there will be a buyer there. And let me throw a question at you guys, just something that, I'm now partner at Council of Public Affairs. I did 7.5 years at Aurea, love the job. And
you did a great job there. That was Aurea was a great organization for us for years. And then obviously things changed for them. Their role was no longer the education side. And so you doing public awareness on real estate, the industry, and our value as realtors, and further education and stuff like that. I think you were the guy for the job. You did a great job.
Oh, appreciate that, TK. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
very, very kind, and I enjoyed it. I loved it, and feel we made a difference. And I'm a partner at Council Public Affairs, and we'll work in the real estate space. It's a government relations firm. We do polling, public relations. Got to go in as a partner, which is exciting. The point I was going to make is, we have clients who are in the modular home business. So I want to throw back at you guys, and this is something that is, high quality. You can build it off site, so you can, get it done faster, and you can enter these things at more affordable rates than you can if you do, stick build. So do you guys, as in the business, do you think we should open up the doors more for sort of modern modular solutions as well?
Modular solutions have
first
been
about this.
around. Yeah. I mean, we've been looking at modular solutions for years. And although some of them are intriguing, the issue with them is, well, there's a few issues. One, there's a stigma around modular as it being an inferior and cheaper product. And so there has to somehow be this barrier removed where people realize that it's probably actually better because it's done in a controlled environment and you can have far more precision, right? You're not dealing with elements and, it's just there's the opportunity for it to be much more efficient and much higher quality. But the savings in cost really has never been there at scale, right? And so what we see is there promises of speedier delivery times and cost savings, and generally neither have been true. And I don't know why that is. I mean, generally, most of the modular stuff is, instead of it being built by robots and automated, like kind of it maybe should be, it's just, guys building it in a warehouse and then shipping it off to a site. And it just doesn't seem to work. And people are doing it more and more because we want that speed and we want that efficiency and we want that savings. But it just doesn't seem to take on because of all of those reasons. And so if you're not sure if people are going to buy into it because they feel like it's, not inferior, and you're not really getting the savings on cost that you were expecting, is there really that big a time savings that it's worth taking the risk? I think that's really what's kind of surrounding the whole modular thing forever, because we've seen modular happening for, I don't know, probably 20, 30 years already.
Mm-hmm. Who was the company that was in the 70s that they were really big?
Modular homes. They would come in a day,
there's
put the
another-
crane out on the street and plop a
Who's that
second
one?
floor on your house.
There's another one though that everybody knows, and they're still around today. They do some stuff up north.
Okay. Well, and look, that's
Yeah.
good advice, right? So addressing some of the stigma that exists, turning the speed into savings, the ability to develop more properties, right, on an existing site. We need to enable that in the province of Ontario. There's been some progress in Toronto, Mississauga. There's another solution, particularly to help people get on the first rung of the property ownership ladder and then move up from there. And, land lease is another opportunity that the province could explore, because those homes, since you own the home but not the land underneath, also an affordable entry level in the province.
Mm-hmm. So I think when people talk about modular, they think about it as like this like massive project that's going to just be built overnight, and it's like going to be robotic arms coming in and just stacking all these houses together, and everyone's just going to be like, wow, why didn't we just do this in the first place?
That was
If
so
you look,
quick.
if you look in China and you see what they're doing and you see how they build, and they've had some success in certain things. I mean, remember when they did the Olympics, some of the buildings and stuff like that they had built so quickly, in that amount of time, when they had to build hospitals during COVID. And so some of those projects ended up they probably are already demolished by now after a few years in some cases, right? So there's lessons to be learned from that. There's a AI revolution that's going on right now is going to really bring a lot of design practices and systematic changes to home construction, robotics and automation. We're seeing it on the auto industry. We're seeing it in manufacturing, where I think they can do it in a more controlled environment, and they can as far as profitability goes, can rely on it. But we just haven't seen it in the housing yet. So I still think that what is going to work hasn't been developed yet. That technology is not there yet, and that it's coming, and that you will have less humans on a construction site in the future, and that we'll be able to construct the buildings at the same quality that we have today, but just in a way that is more automated and that can work 24 hours a day and that can go through the winters, and that, can do it in a sense where we'll get the benefit that we all want when people hear the word modular. But like as Darryl was saying, that there's not as much benefit today to provide that product. Although I think there's a place for it in the market. It just doesn't replace what we have today, unfortunately.
Great. Glad I asked. It's really helpful perspective for our clients. Thanks.
Yeah. Now on the federal side of things, okay, so do we have an election coming up? Is there an election coming up? Do we not have an election coming up?
I think we don't have a prime minister. Maybe
do we have who's the leader of the literal party right now? Is it
who's the leader of the country right now? What's going on?
Tim, what's happening?
All right. So 80%, 87%. That's my calculation here on March the 6th, a taping of a federal election quite soon. 87%. And it will be 87%. You heard it. You're here to hear first. And if I were Mark Carney, who is going to win the liberal leadership, I would call an election pretty much right away. So that puts us in election sometime in March. The reason I would do that is because he doesn't have a seat. Do you really want to go back into Parliament unless he can forge some kind of deal with Jagmeet Singh and the NDP to prolong the life of government past its best before date? Do you really want to lose and sort of be defeated in Parliament? I think a leader should seize the day, roll the dice and say, here's what I stand for. I'm different from Trudeau. We need action and we need to stand up to Trump, something like that. So that's why I think it'd be 87%. I think he goes to polls pretty quickly. I still think that Poilievre is going to win the next election. I've known him for 20 plus years. We worked together during my time in politics. He's a great communicator. He's smart, he's strong, he's very determined. And he's got the right set of values. So I'm obviously a supporter. And I think those types of characteristics pay off when Canadians are looking for change. Mark Carney's bounce might be what I call a dead cat bounce. And no offense to, any cat fans who are watching the broadcast or listening in. I will tell you my defense, though. Here's a quick story if you guys don't mind. So I'm more of a dog person. My wife, Debbie's more of a cat person. So when we got married, we compromised. And we got 2 cats.
There you go. There you go. I was wondering what that compromise looked like, but that makes sense.
So the big talk right now is this. How does Poilievre deal with Trump? And how is he going to differ from how Carney will deal with Trump? Because I think that is a decision that people will make, is who do I think is going to represent us fighting against the U.S., not leading the country anymore internally, but how are we going to deal with Trump? There's a lot of fear there.
Is he strong enough? Is he strong enough?
Huh. Because I think he comes across as strong, right? He's actually quite experienced. I think he comes across as a strong leader and communicator. That may rub some people the wrong way if they think he's too strong and not compromising enough, but he strikes me as a strong leader. So it will be an advantage to Carney because he'll be in the spotlight, right? Only one person can actually lead this. Poilievre can support it, say what he would do differently, but Carney will have the spotlight. But, honestly, I mean, if I think Doug Ford's taken an approach. So if I were Poilievre, I would probably be on a similar line. Hope this gets resolved. Here's what I think our trade-off should be that are buying the way. Good for Canadians. Poilievre will talk a lot about getting pipelines built and using our energy resources to make things more affordable and be an energy exporter. But otherwise, I suspect his take will be, if not exactly in tone, similar to what Doug Ford is doing in substance.
So the concern that people have right now is that a lot of his supporters are Trump supporters as well, right? And that if he's too strong on Trump talk, and if he's too strong on that, he can lose, some of his support. Do you think that affects his decisions right now on how he's going to be? You think the election? Do you think his part of him right now is going, geez, a month ago I had this in the bag, and right now I really need to, step up my game here to protect. Whenever the election comes, to protect the victory for the Conservatives.
Yeah, I don't think that that will be a consideration. If they have some Conservative supporters that like Trump, it may be because some of his policies. Maybe they want to see a strong leader, but ultimately, will they say you should be nicer to Trump and not going to vote for you? I don't think so, because Poilievre will will come across to have the qualities around being a strong leader. He'll have some conservative policies he brings forward. So I wouldn't be as worried about that. I think a bigger challenge, TK, is that he kind of had it down. People were tired of Justin Trudeau. There's something in politics that I call the 10-year itch. You've been in for a decade. People are tired and they want to change no matter what kind of job you're doing.
Yeah.
Harper suffered from that. Trudeau, Chrétien, Mulroney, and Trudeau definitely did. So, and then he had a campaign around the carbon tax, making life more affordable. So now the channel has changed where it's Trump every day. So it's just harder to break through and offer the contrast. I think that's the bigger challenge. I'm worrying if some of his voters also like Donald Trump.
If people have been watching the show for a few years, we talked about this a while ago, and it's come up again recently. And I wonder, A, you must know about it, but I wonder if you know about it. Two, what you think about it. Have you ever heard of CanZook? The alliance between Canada, UK, New Zealand, and Australia. What's the other?
Yeah,
I don't. That's funny. This is a cartoon character, CanZook.
Have you not heard of CanZook before?
I don't. It's there's a state where Dorothy lived. Is that what you're talking about? There's the Five Eyes, right? I mean, we do have allies, those countries that keep an eye on threats from China or Russia or such. So that group of countries does make a lot of sense. But no, you got me on that one,
You
Darryl.
should check it out. So it's like a buying group or like a trading block where they're talking about opening up passports and trade and free trade between those four countries.
Okay.
And now it's like gaining steam again because of this tariff craziness.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I talked about that earlier on, right? It is going to diversify, but it is, if you don't have the rail, you don't have the roads, you don't have the proximity, the time zone. I guess we've got the language that is consistent. It's just harder slogging. And our integration with North America for those reasons is strong. And I do think that there's so many ties that go so deep economically and culturally, and there are enough sane heads around. I do remain optimistic at the end of the day. The kind of trade-off that I outlined is in the realm of possibilities.
Well, and also, what about the pipelines and how they work? Do we even really we can't get it to the east of the country without going through the states? Who the hell agreed to that route for the pipeline, first of all? But so how do we fix that? Because don't they kind of have us by the balls because of that generally?
Look, our inability to build pipelines has made us weaker in these negotiations, right? We had an opportunity to actually use pipelines to transport natural gas, liquefied natural gas into Europe when the war between Ukraine and Russia took place. And we got $0. The Americans got all of that, right? So what stops us, Darryl, it's a really good point. I'm glad that you brought it up. It's process. It is so much level of consultation. It is so many ways to challenge projects that Canada has really been crippled in its ability to get big things built. It takes us a decade to get to maybe on projects. I think we built the Trans-Canada Railway, where I'm from here in Niagara, not too far from where I'm talking to you today, the Welland Canal, right? We built a massive, successful subway system in those days. We can, our 400 series highways, we can actually do this, but we're so now bogged down in process. There's that old expression to never let a good crisis go to waste. And I wish we weren't in this crisis today, but honest to goodness, it can bring enough pressure to bear that we speed things up. Respect the environment for sure, but you have to do check and check and check that it takes you 10 years to get a housing development done. That's just nuts. So let's fix that while we're at it.
Yeah, like right now we got the 413. We had the whole green belt, situation there. Like all these things were all good for us. Eglinton, they're all what we need. And it's just like three people said it's not good for somebody, and all of a sudden now we're in big trouble, right? So I totally agree. There was a guy that we had on the show. He was an architect, and I'm not sure if it was Ben or who it was, Darryl, but it was somebody who said that there was a major architecture. It was one of the guys we've had on guests for 5 years now on the show, but he came in. He had a major architectural firm who has like offices in every city in America. And they said, okay, we're going to now go take over Canada. And they moved their whole operation up here, opened up offices, hired all these architects. And then they started to go through the process that they did down in the States. And it was like 5 years later, they hadn't built anything. And they were like, what is wrong with you guys up here?
Yeah.
They just took their business back and head back south.
Yeah.
They're like, we can't build anything.
Yeah,
Nothing
that
gets
was
done.
Ben. Yeah.
Was it Ben?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was fronting for a big, a huge. And actually add a layer to the story. The company was based around purpose-built rentals. So they were having all this red tape way back before anybody was really doing purpose-built rentals. They actually just missed the mark because they left right before the boom in purpose-built rentals. But just like TK's saying, they got so famished with all the tape and all the process. It's people do not understand. Okay, they see guys going to try and build a building and they think all you do is buy it, you hire a few people and you fight with the city a little bit, and next thing you know there's a building. The insanity that ensues from B through Y, dealing with so many different egos, personalities, departments, people with their own shit going on in their lives. It's insane that, well, first of all, it's amazing we get anything done actually in this process, but it's such a shame because if you're in it, you go, none of this is necessary. I don't need to hire all these guys to tell me what I can do here. I already know all this stuff. Why do I got to hire all these people to give it?
Daryl's got a project right now that he just got zoned in Toronto and Forest Hill.
Yeah.
And the difference in time is incredible. So I'm going to just credit the municipality. So at least Toronto, that's all I can speak for. What they've done in the last 2 years, since they don't really have any applications going in anymore because everyone's losing their site and they're going under receivership and that the market's changed. The municipalities have done an amazing job getting things back on track. Like he got zoned in 6 months on a site that, hopefully would be going to sell.
With a ton of opposition like you've never seen. And the city's trying, okay? They're really trying. But every time they try, it's like when your idiot brother-in-law, he's gonna try, he's gonna fuck it up, right? But he's at least gonna try. They're trying, but they're screwing up everything. But I mean, they did approve us in
180 degrees over the last 2 years compared to where they were.
That was a lot
5 years ago.
But that was a lot to do with us going in and being reasonable and not pushing the limits and all kinds of other things. But they were very friendly.
So what they've changed in zoning, so all this missing middle stuff, all the new policies, fourplexes on the lot, laneway suites. So that was the beginning of it. Now it's 6 stories on major streets. Now we've got avenues that are opening up. We've got all these increases the densities, all the major transit station areas from the province and the provincial policy statement where now everything around transit is getting more density. Like those policies are working. So pass that information on to whoever needs to hear it. It's slow, but it's working because more density will be built in the place of buildings that would be built anyways. And actual deals can be done now because when you look at the cost of land versus what you're going to build on it, it'll make more sense now, right? Because it's got to make sense. There's sites that are fantastic, but you got a seller who needs to sell it to the developer in order for us to actually build anything on it. Right?
But it shows you it is possible, right? We don't have to be condemned to this space.
Possible. Yeah.
And you really need 2 things, the carrot and the stick. So municipalities, you mentioned Toronto's doing this, give them a reward, right? Give them the carrot, encourage that behavior. And for those that continue to say no, they listen to NIMBYs. They say, we don't want new people moving in our neighborhood. You got to use a stick.
Yeah, let's use a big stick on the NIMBYs, like as big a stick as you can find quickly.
Which they are. So now third-party appeals, they've removed that. Like Doug is doing a great job on this. Like I know people are like, well, he hasn't built the houses. Well, we just reelected him again, so obviously nobody else is going to do a better job. But like the policies are there. They're working. They make sense. It's a provincial responsibility housing. They are going in the right direction. I think more will come during this term where he'll start really looking at what are the other hangups based on feedback from developers.
For sure. And they did have, right, the most homes built, I think, in 30 years. For a couple of years under Premier Ford, and then you guys just talked about purpose-built rentals too. That was happening. Then we got the interest rates jacked up and the uncertainty we're in, and the car hit the brakes. We just need to encourage our officials to get back and put that foot on the accelerator again.
Yeah, we built a lot of the wrong product. So just unfortunately, the way the environment was, we've got a bunch of product we don't really need. So purpose-built rentals, they'll solve that. They'll make bigger units for families to live in because people need to live somewhere. Obviously, we don't have the land that we would want. We're subject to the lake to the south, greenbelt to the east and north, and further to the west. Does anyone really want to live over there? I'm just
all
joking.
that land around us is really handcuffing
it's
us
hard.
with the land situation.
It's hard.
Right
It's
now.
hard to get more land. So really, it's just we have to find a product that makes sense. So the missing middle, adding more units in the neighborhood zones, that's a really big thing. Last thing I want to ask you about. Related to our whole situation here is Elon Musk is getting involved with politics. You've got the Department of Government Efficiencies. There's a little common sense in what he's got to say. We feel attacked because of some of the policies, and Doug's removed his Starlink contract. I feel like he means well, and I'm a fan of his in one sense. And I feel like what he's going to do for the U.S. government is something that is useful. Do you think that something like that would be useful here in Canada? Is to be really digging into efficiencies? Was it? Oh man, we always screw this up. Venezuela, Argentina. Argentina, the prime minister of or president of Argentina, cut this huge amount of his staff and cut this huge amount of government jobs away, and all of a sudden, their inflation and their debt is being recovered, pretty quickly, something that we've never seen before. And so, is that something that is going to be useful in Canada, or even possible for us to have?
Oh, I think it'd be
You're out of
useful.
politics now, Tim. You're out of politics, so you're not you're not on the payroll anymore.
There's two things, TK, to support what you just said, in my view, and it is not uncommon in Canadian history as well as American history for a successful business leader to bring their know-how to the table, do a project, get it done well, be thanked, and then move off. It's regardless whether they think of Musk or not, right? This is a tool that you can use. So there's two things that can be done. Yep, absolutely. To go through spending the fine-tooth comb, to apply some common sense to government contracts and contracting. There's a habit in government to keep doing things the same way because that's the way we always did them. So an outsider can bring that kind of objective notion to the table and bring recommendations. The politicians will have to approve it, but they can be that clear-eyed view from their business background. Number two, red tape. You guys gave some examples earlier on about the red tape that grinds housing to an absolute stop. Premier Harris actually appointed a minister responsible for reducing red tape. And they bring legislation through at least twice a year just to try to help free businesses up, particularly small businesses, to focus more on the customers, to help create more jobs and ultimately lower costs to all of this. And you've seen a lot of that in the hospitality sector. Like I can now actually go get a beer at a corner store or have it delivered to my home. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to be done in reducing red tape and just giving us more choice as Canadians.
Yeah, Uber will even pick it up along the way, right? And you order Uber Eats now, it'll say like, on the way, we can stop and get you a case of beer if you want.
Uber's another great example. Big Taxi, right, was protected for so long by red tape, and then they delivered a lousy product. Yeah. So red tape reduction and reducing wasteful spending, that's a role that people with business experience can play. And when you get Doug Ford on your job, why don't you each raise your hand and take on one of those? You figure out which one you want.
There you have it.
Beautiful. Well, we appreciate your time today, Tim. Perfect timing. This week has just been confusing with all sorts. You just keep hearing stories after stories, and I talk to people, and everyone's got their own ideas, but really, at the end of the day, nobody knows. I don't even think Trump knows. But to hear it from your perspective, I think that there's a lot of reality there, and coming from experience makes a lot of sense. And I think everybody who's listening and watching the show today is going to get a lot of value from it. So.
Well, my pleasure. Let me close, TK and Darryl, by saying thanks for the work that you do. Not only are you out there every day busting your butts to help clients find a great place to call home, to give them solid experience advice on the biggest purchase or sale they can make in their lives, but you're also informing them on other issues around there. And it is so easy to be uncertain during these times. So getting across information to people to help, look to the long run as an extraordinary public service. Thank you both.
That's right.
Thanks,
Mr. Hudak. And just to drive one point home, you won't get that on the Tom Story show, TK, right? You're going to get more views on this show, right? You're going to get more exposure, and you are so right. And this was so wonderful. And I just want to make sure everybody knows that this show is so much better than the Tom Story show, which you have been on, and this will be way better.
They're our friends. They're our friends. Tom and Steve are our friends. So Steve was on our show last week. He was our guest last week.
Tom's on next
way.
week.
Yeah. We've had them on and Tom's one's next week?
Yeah, next week.
They're
horrible.
So they're friends of our show, but we bug them because we're on at the same time and they copied us, but whatever.
They copy everything.
We've been doing it
do,
longer than them, and that's okay. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's right.
This is like a sort of a John Cena, The Rock, Dustin Rhodes.
Whoever wins, we're those guys.
Right?
Yeah.
We're the winners.
To the chair match coming up then.
That's right. Well, we got our secret rep in TK here. And now Tim Hudak, who will be a regular on the show from here on out forever. Thank you so much for your
We'll get you back eventually, Tim, when we got another pressing global catastrophe.
Thank you so much for joining us. Honestly, the best guest of all time. We actually learned something today, TK. This was like a monumental show for us.
I know. We're geniuses.
Yeah. Although come Sunday is going to be all out the way.
Maybe wrong, but today though, that information is absolutely the best information out there.
That's right. Well, thank you kindly, sir.
Okay, Tim. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Okay. Bye.
That was the biggest, baddest, most informative episode.
It was a well-timed episode, yeah. And if you guys are still watching, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel so we can get more guests. We're trying to get Doug Ford here, guys. Okay?
Yeah,
if we only got 5,000 views, how is Doug going to want to come on our platform and talk to guys like us? Okay? We need to share it, get onto Apple, onto Spotify, onto wherever you're listening to the show, and write a review. And check us out on Instagram. Check out the Clips channel on YouTube as well. Man, we're everywhere.
We are everywhere. And it's because we're better than the Tom Story show, TK. It's the truth.
That's what the people say.
It's the truth.